Imperfect competition, which covers monopolistic competition and oligopoly. Monopolistic competition, as you can guess from the name, is a mix of monopoly and competition. Basically, it's when you have many firms selling products that are similar but not exactly identical, right? And there are many examples of this. So this is where it gets more realistic. Perfect competition is more theoretical, and it's useful as a theory, as a basis. But here we have a lot of examples. And this is where you get product differentiation, which is a term which you've probably seen in maybe other courses like marketing. So, you know, if everybody else is producing oranges, then you produce apples, right? Something like that. You kind of try to have your own niche in the market. It's like monopoly in the short run, which means that there is some level of market power, not too much, but there is some level because you're kind of special, you're kind of unique. And it's like perfect competition in the long run. So in the long run, it kind of levels off. So what it means is that there are zero economic profits because of freedom of entry and exit. So that was kind of an important thing. Whenever there is freedom of entry and exit, the profits level off to zero. Another market structure is called oligopoly, which is closer to monopoly. It's when there are only a few sellers offering similar or identical products. Okay, so there are fewer sellers in oligopoly than in monopolistic competition, and they have more market share. So each has a high market share, and one example, or one specific case of that would be duopoly, which is when there are two firms, exactly two. Okay, pause here. This is quite a useful picture from your book, which kind of summarizes the four different market structures. Two of them we saw before, that was monopoly and perfect competition. So on one extreme you have monopoly where there is only one seller. On the other extreme you have perfect competition where there are many sellers. And it gives you some examples. So for example, wheat and milk, so things that are kind of, you know, generic. It's the same thing, whether one person makes it or another. And then in the middle, you have monopolistic competition and oligopoly, right? So one of the things that makes a difference is whether the number of firms, or whether you have many firms, or you have only one, or you have a few. The other thing that makes a difference is whether the products are differentiated or they're identical, okay? It's a good idea to take some notes on this diagram, but you don't have to. All right, let's talk a little bit more about monopolistic competition. So basically, there are more substitutes than monopoly. And substitutes, you've seen that when we talked about elasticity, right? So the demand curve is going to be flatter, which means the slope is smaller in absolute value, right? People have other choices. And you maximize profit like a monopolist, which we have this important condition that we saw before, marginal revenue equals marginal cost, right? So you try to basically get the highest value possible at the lowest possible cost. And the formula for profit, this is old stuff, this is review, and you've seen this in the chapter on monopoly, is total revenue minus total cost, and we can kind of simplify that into a more practical formula. So total revenue is the same as price times quantity. Total cost is the same as average total cost times quantity, and then you can factor out the quantity, right? So you get quantity times price minus total average total cost, right? So this formula you've seen before. It's very useful in doing problems. It's also very useful in doing graphs. So in the short run, the profit may be positive or negative or zero. So the profit could be anything. So if the profit is positive, what it means is that you have to look here. That's where the sign is coming from, right? So if this whole thing is positive, then it means that the price is greater, or the positive part is greater than the negative thing, which is average total cost. If the profit is negative, then it's the opposite, right? So when you take notes, write that down yourself. You should fill in the blanks. In the long run, the profit will always be zero, and the reason is because there's going to be freedom of entry and exit. So if there is negative profit, some firms will exit. If there's positive profit, more firms will enter. Either way, you reach that point of zero. So if it is zero, again, you have to look at your formula and decide what's the relationship between price and average total cost. So pause here and write this stuff down. You've seen it before, but it's important. All right, let's do some fun stuff. We're gonna graph the case of monopolistic competition in the short run and in the long run. in the short run, it's something very similar to a monopoly, which you've seen before. It's pretty much the same procedure. The only difference is that the demand curve is flatter. That's the only difference between monopolistic competition and monopoly in the short run. Okay, now this is an important slide. You might need to watch it again. We're gonna have a bunch of graphs here. So let's walk through it slowly together. So first of all, we draw our good old marginal cost curve and a demand curve. Remember, marginal cost is pretty much the equivalent of what the sellers care about, so that would be equivalent of supply. So we also have to draw the marginal revenue, and we know the maximum profit happens when there is the intersection of marginal revenue and marginal cost. So that's going to give us the optimum quantity. So the monopolistic competitive firm is going to operate at QM. That's how much they produce, right? Now, how you get the price, this is the part that was kind of tricky. To get the price, you have to go up to the demand curve. You have to map QM onto the demand curve, and you get a price level, right? So that's the price level that the firm gets in the short run. Okay, now if you want to find the profit, the formula for profit was quantity times price minus average total cost. We just found that, right? So you need to have the average total cost curve, and you need to find the distance between the price and the average total cost. Okay, so in this case, we have that level, and the shaded area is the profit. So this is the case where the firm is making positive profit in the short run. All right, so here is a good idea to pause here and draw this diagram down, because then I'm going to get rid of it. It's a good idea to actually draw two short run curves. So one is what you see right now. The other one would be a case of loss. So in the case of loss, I'm going to get rid of this profit stuff just so that it's not too messy. In the case of the loss, it occurs when the average total cost is a little bit higher. Okay, so if you find your corresponding average total cost is above the price level, and then you get a loss. Okay, so if you were to illustrate graphically when the firm makes positive profit or negative profit, you just saw it, right? The formula is the same. You always have to multiply quantity by the difference of price and average total cost, right? The formula that we just saw in the last slide. All right, so this is the short run. Let's look at the long run. The long run is very similar in essence. The only difference is that the average total cost, the place of that is fixed, right? So again, we find our quantity based on MR equals MC. We find quantity, the corresponding price, and our curvy average total cost is going to pass right through the price line. So the average total cost in the long run is going to be the same, exactly the same as the price level. So because these two are the same, then what happens is that the profit is going to be zero. All right. So and the reason why the profit is zero is because there are no barriers, or there are low barriers to entry. Now you might be like, hang on, there's product differentiation. So these companies are making different products. That's true, there's product differentiation, but still they're kind of close. They're close enough. So as long as there is more similar products around, the demand for each other product is going to reduce, right? So the profits of the other ones will reduce. So in the long run, what happens is that whenever you have freedom of entry and exit, there's going to be zero economic profits. And if you remember, zero economic profit isn't such a bad idea, because economic costs include opportunity cost. It includes everything. So zero economic profit, it doesn't mean that you're just wasting your time. You already got a good return on all the time that you put in. All right, so pause here. If you need to watch again, watch again. As I said, it's a good idea to draw two short run curves, or two short run diagrams for yourself, and one long run graph. Wow, that was scary. All right, a relevant topic to monopolistic competition is advertisement, since every firm wants to set themselves apart from others. Advertisement can be manipulative, which is when it changes people's tastes and preferences. That was one of our demand shifters back at the beginning of the course. If you remember, advertisement tends to change people's inclination towards something. All right. An important thing to consider when we talk about advertisement, or pretty much anything, is how does it impact competition? Now, competition is extremely important because that's our golden key to efficiency and well-being. All right, to ensure that we have maximized our well-being, we have maximized the size of our pie, we have to make sure that we have competition. Competition is a solution to attaining efficiency. All right, now with advertisement, there is a negative aspect to it because it reduces price competition. Okay, because it creates product differentiation. If you're so unique, then the prices of other products will not be as applicable in terms of competing with you. However, it increases competition in non-price elements like quality. Okay, so in a way, it has both aspects, and it is itself a sign of feeling competitive and challenged. So if a firm engages in advertisement, it means that they are feeling, that they need to do it, right? So itself could be a sign, it could be a good sign in a way, right? Another very important aspect of advertisement, which is often ignored, is that advertisement is informative. Consumers can make more informed decision. Okay, so the idea is that consumers are not these mindless people who can easily be manipulated. That gets a lot of emphasis in psychology and also in marketing, and usually advertisement is used with a negative connotation, but there is also this informative element to advertisement, because people are not stupid, right? We're talking about all people together, right? We're talking about the entire market. It's not that easy to manipulate people in the long run, all right? So the informative aspect of advertisement is quite important. So it basically gives ideas to people. And that results in higher efficiency, which means greater total surplus. All right. Also, advertisement is a signal of quality, since the seller is willing to spend so much to promote it, right? So if you see some company advertising its product, it itself shows that they're pretty confident about their product. If it's garbage, then they wouldn't spend so much money to promote it, right? Especially if you think long term, then it can be meaningful. All right. Another related topic is brand names, which again you might have seen in marketing or other courses. Basically, there's this idea of brand loyalty where a person buys a product and is willing to pay for that product, not because of its quality, but because of its brand. The brand itself becomes something desirable. All right. But the thing is, this is not such a bad thing. Why? Because that brand or name is itself established and popular because of high quality, right? So a lot of these companies which tend to be famous and all that, they have some reputation basically. So that reputation comes from some substance. There is some substance to that brand. There's a correlation between brand and quality basically, so that itself is informative. So there is an example that your book gives, which is quite interesting. It says that if you travel to somewhere that you haven't been before and you don't know anyone there and it's a strange place, and let's say you're driving by and you want to have lunch and you notice a local restaurant, you have no idea what this local restaurant is, what is their quality, anything. And you also see McDonald's, right? Now, McDonald's, you might see like, oh no, this is garbage, this is junk food, but at least you know what kind of garbage you're getting, right? So if you see McDonald's, maybe it's not such a bad idea to just grab a hamburger there instead of risking that local restaurant, you see? So in other words, this whole thing is that the brand names could be informative of quality. Maybe not good quality, but at least it sets some consistent or standard pattern that the producer has to follow. All right. There is a very interesting article here about women's cosmetics and status consumption. So status consumption is basically about show off, right? And brands are really demand for fame. Okay. I have my QM students read this article and they love it. The article is pretty old, as you can see. You were not born back then. So, but it's quite interesting. So what the article says is that there is more status purchase with more socially visible products. In other words, if the product is such that other people can see it, if it's such that you can show off, then you would be willing to pay more for it. Not because of its quality, but just for the show off. Okay? There's higher willingness to pay for a brand lipstick than a brand facial cleanser. Now, those of you who are more into cosmetics would know this better. Lipstick, a lot of times you can kind of show off. Women, when they use it, they can take it off in public areas and show it off. That's why the brand for a lipstick makes more meaning, than a brand for facial cleanser, where facial cleanser is used at home and other people don't see it, right? So in the case of lipstick, it depends more on brand and less on price. So it's not so responsive to the price, which makes it less price elastic. In the case of facial cleanser, it depends more on quality and it's more price elastic. All right. Talking about advertisement, here's an example.
Like a rib, it tastes like liberty. Like a rib with a bun of sesame.
We start with authentic, letter-graded meat and process the hell out of it till it's good enough for Krusty.
Try my new crusty rib wedge. I don't mind the taste. Ooh, a new hamburger sandwich.
Wow, I can't wait to pack that into my colon.
Dude, take it easy on the fatty foods. You're running out of leg veins to transplant into your heart.
I got arm veins, don't I?
Yeah, so it's really a form of product differentiation to come up with a new hamburger. And a lot of times there is a little campaign.
The rib witch is back.
The rib witch! The commercials have come to pass.
Try the new rib witch. It's so good you'll croak.
You seem like an impartial observer, but I've been fooled by so many people in costumes.
Try the sauce. I'm soaked in it.
Oh, I could lick you all day long.
And yet my children think I'm a failure.
One rib witch, please. Now without lettuce.
All right, but a lot of times that's only for a limited time.
Hey!
Hey, it's the guy from the drive-thru. Yeah, I'd like 3 rib witches, a Diet Coke.
Will you get out of my... Look, about the rib witch. There aren't gonna be any more. The animal we made him from is now extinct.
The pig?
The cow?
You're way off. Think smaller. Think more legs. People, we went through something magical together. And it's not important who got rich off of whom or who was exposed to tainted what. And because you believed in my dream, I want you to fight over the last rib witch ever made. Here.
Welcome to the real world, hippies!
Wow, what a long, strange product rollout it's been. Goodbye!
Man, you got the last rib witch. I'll give you anything for it.
What a mess. Wow, that was cool. All right, Oligopoly, we are moving to a new chapter. This is another market structure where there are only few sellers, which means that they have a lot of market power. So it's almost like a monopoly, and they are not price takers. Okay, so it's not like perfectly competitive firms. So one example of that would be oil producers. There are few of them, or gas stations. So they could, if they want, they could kind of make an agreement with each other, right? So it's actually better for them to collude, all right? Collude, you might want to write this down. Collusion means secret agreement, all right? So make sure you write this down if you don't know what it means. Collusion means a secret agreement. So it's kind of like you have this dark, smoky room with people, murmuring and trying to reach an agreement. Now, what is this agreement about? Wow, that's cool. It's about acting as a monopoly together. So you're like, instead of competing, let's get together and act in our joint best interest, right? So jointly lower quantity in order to raise the price. Okay, and that's going to be beneficial for all sides. All right, and this is called a cartel. So cartel is when you have, a small group of producers agreeing to act as a monopolist. So the best example of a cartel is OPEC. You might have heard of that. It's the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. They had a lot of power in setting the price of oil in the 70s, and by reducing their production. Okay. Another example would be steel companies. Sometimes what they do is that because there are only a few of them, they would tend to raise the price in their joint interest. Now, the problem is that each of them will have an incentive to cheat from its quota to maximize its own profit. So cheating from quota means that they have the incentive to produce a little bit more. If they produce a little bit more, they get, to sell more, and that's beneficial for them only. Other firms in the cartel would actually lose because the price comes down a bit, right? This word quota, you have to know what it means. Quota basically means a limit or a share. Right, so there's this certain limit which is given to each party. So the dilemma is, should we cooperate or should we compete? Right, there is an incentive to cooperate and there is an incentive to compete, and these two conflict. So there are two types of collusion. One of them is explicit collusion, which is also called overt collusion, and that's illegal. That's kind of like getting together to raise the price. Another one would be tacit or covert collusion, which is when one side sends a signal to the other side and sees if they're going to pick on that or not. So for instance, think of this. Let's say you have two gas stations across the intersection, right next to each other. What they could do, and sometimes they do this, is that one of them could raise the price a little bit and see if the other side also raises the price, so that both of them can sell at a higher price. Now, if only one of them does, then everybody goes to the cheaper one. So it wouldn't work, right? So that's kind of like a tacit signal sending, right? Another example is with mortgage rates. The banks and the mortgage rates that they give to borrowers. Pause here. Oligopoly is pretty interesting because you're like, oh no, what should I do? What will the other side do? Should we compete or cooperate? It's really challenging. It's kind of strategic. So it's hard to reach and maintain monopolist profits because the competition laws, first of all, prohibit agreement among firms. So it's illegal to reach an agreement. So there's an impediment there. Second, you must agree over the shares and how to distribute the profit. So even if you do reduce your production and increase your profit, then how do you share it, right? Think of this, if there's one big producer and one or two smaller ones, then how are they going to reach an agreement? Maybe the big guy wants more, right? And then the smaller guys are like, oh no, what should we do, right? So it's hard to reach an agreement then. It's not always 50-50, it's not that simple, all right? And there's also the incentive to cheat, and cheat means produce more. Okay, so we're going to see what's going on here. So let's say one side cheats. So cheating means that one side of the agreement increases its output beyond its quota. So quota is, let's say you reach an agreement that each of you should produce 100 units, right? So if one side says, hey, you know what, I'm going to produce 120 units, what's going to happen? Well, that one side gets to sell a higher quantity. Their quantity is higher, which means that they make more profit. That one individual firm makes more profit, so it's good for them. But what happens is that the market price also goes down, right? Because the demand curve slopes downward, right? So if the quantity goes up, the price goes down. The price goes down for everyone. So all of the other firms are going to be worse off, right? Their profit is going to go down. So they're like, damn it, so the benefit accrues only to the cheater, but the cost is divided among all members. Okay, so this is actually a pretty good picture because you have pi, and pi is represents profit, right? So it's like one side getting all of the pies. And this illustrates why there is an incentive to cheat. There is incentive to cheat because the profit goes up only for the one person and it goes down for the rest. All right, so pause here. All right, let's do another fun, colorful graph. And we are going to look at that one member and why that one member is going to cheat, right? So here's the scenario. Let's say you have only 2 producers or 3 producers. They get together somehow, either tacitly or explicitly or whatever, and they decide to act as a monopoly, right? So they reduce their production and they decide on some quota. So each person is given a certain quantity and say, hey, you know what? This is how much you produce, not more and not less. Okay, so let's say that's quantity 1 for this member, which means that and they're getting price 1 and quantity 1. All right, now if you remember, we had this formula for profit. This is an extremely useful formula to use whenever we have a graph. So whenever you have a graph to do the profit on the graph, then make sure you use this formula. Write it down for yourself whenever you do the graph, and then use it to draw it. So you need to have the average total cost, and then you need to find the distance between price and average total cost. All right, so that would be the point there, and this gives you a little rectangle, which is the profit that the firm is making. All right, so the area of that rectangle is the profit that the firm is making. All right, now if you remember, we had this profit maximization condition where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And if the firm makes 1 more unit, they are going to get price 1 for that. Now the price is going to drop a little bit because, you know, in order to sell that, they have to lower the price, but that's small, and we're going to kind of ignore that. Otherwise, the graph is going to be a mess. So we're going to assume that marginal revenue is the same as price here. So we need to draw our marginal cost curve and find the intersection of price with that curve. Okay, so that gives us a new quantity. That's going to be the profit maximization quantity for this firm. The profit maximization quantity is obtained from setting marginal revenue to marginal cost. In this case, marginal revenue is almost the same as the price. All right, and at that level, we have a new average total cost, which is ATC2, and that gives us an extra profit, right? So the profit that the firm would make at Q2 includes all of the green stuff plus the orange stuff, except that it doesn't include the red stuff, right? So basically what happens is that the green stuff is the gained profit, the red part is the lost profit. And as you can see in this diagram, the green is much bigger than the red, so it is in the advantage of the firm to move from Q1 to Q2, and that's the whole meaning of cheating. So cheating is when they don't observe their quota, they produce a bit more than that, and that's in their own advantage, but not in the advantage of others. All right, and as the number of sellers in an oligopoly increases, it would approach perfect competition. And you can see that that's pretty intuitive, right? It's much easier to reach an agreement when you are fewer people than when you are a lot of people. If you have a lot of sellers in any industry, they're going to compete more than cooperate. Pause here, doing nice, large, wide, neat graph for yourself, and if you can, color code it. Wow, that's cool. All right, we talked about advertisement as a signal. Gifts are also a signal, and the idea of gifts is quite interesting in economics. Economists have a problem with gifts. Okay, now the problem is that an efficient gift would be something that the recipient would love the most, right? That would be efficient, and that's what economists are obsessed about. But most likely you don't know what the other side wants, right? You don't know what exactly would be their best choice. Okay, so you're acting out of ignorance. It's very likely that you're just going to waste your money because you could have bought something better, right? This is a cool branch of economics called behavioral economics. So in terms of economics, the optimal choice, the best gift would be cash, okay, or a gift card, because then the person can go and buy what they want, right? Now, there's a problem. In relationships, putting thought into what you buy and the time to go and get it are signs of love and care. So gift is a signal. It shows the sign that you put in some time for that person. So that's meaningful in that sense, right? So even though it's suboptimal, so it's not exactly the best thing that you could have bought, but the fact that you put in the time, that's meaningful, right? So effectively, sometimes you have to waste money to prove your love. That's what it means, really. That's ultimately what it is. You have to be inefficient just because you want to prove your love, right? And a good example of that is cut flowers. I really don't know why they have cut flowers, but I mean, how long does it last, right? But it's a nice gesture, right? So there is that psychological element. And for the same reason, if your parents give you money, you don't mind because you're sure that your parents love you. Right? They don't need to prove it to you. But in a relationship, sometimes you need to prove it to the other person. That's why giving money may not be the best choice. Talking about behavioral economics, there's also voting. Economists also have a problem voting, right? Uh, because it has a very high opportunity cost without any discernible benefits. You are personally taking a lot of costs, and benefits are almost zero, and if there's any benefits, probably not even to you, but to others. If you think on the margin, remember, we think on the margin, the sunk costs are over. It's almost impossible that your vote would affect change, right? Like the chance is literally zero for all practical purposes. So is it really rational? Is it really efficient to go and vote? If you ask an economist, they would say no. Now, it's really similar to the case of vegetarianism or veganism. Some people go vegan because they want to, I don't know, protect animal rights or the environment. Well, how much can one person make a difference if you think on the margin, right? Now I'm a vegetarian myself, so I actually think there is a reason for doing it. But if you think that you're going to make a difference in the world, then maybe not. I mean, you better do it only for other reasons, and there are other reasons. So why do people vote? One of them is self-expression, that you have an opinion and you want to express that, right? So there is a satisfaction there. There is also the idea of civil duty, right? So there is a social norm for a good citizen. What is a good citizen? A good citizen would vote, right? And there's a signaling to be seen at the ballot box, right? That's a strong incentive for voting. It's pretty much show off in a way, right? And because of that, there's actually been a study in Switzerland with very interesting results that the modern methods of voting, which you can vote online or from home or through mail, where you don't actually physically go there to be seen, these modern methods, they reduce the cost, so that's good, but the turnout also has gone down because of them. Why? Because of the signaling benefits going down. So you can't really have that signal when you vote from home, when you vote on a computer online, and that's why in the study in Switzerland, people have voted less than before. Okay, so that's kind of interesting there. Now at the end, I should emphasize that all of you must vote. If you're eligible, all of you must vote. Okay, as responsible citizens. Now this is my advice as a teacher who is working for a governmental institution, not as a free-thinking economist. All right, have a good day.